Alright, today we're going to be looking at the Samsung QN90C. This is going to be a unboxing general setup and first impressions and a couple other little things, but not the review. The review will be following within the next few days or so. So the QN90C is Samsung's second from the top for the 4K mini LED QLEDs, with the QN95C being the one step above, which as of right now is not released yet. I've now spent a couple of weeks with the TV. I think many people are going to be very happy with this if they decide to pick it up. I will have a, like I said, review video as well as an in-depth settings video. So if you're interested, press the subscribe button and keep an eye out for those in the near future. But for now, let's get into the unboxing portion. So continuing with Samsung's fairly recent trend, they don't really put anything on the box. It is pretty just plain brown. Pop it open, you get your little bag in the top with the remote and papers and such. The front of the screen there does have some foam protecting it in the middle, and once you take the box top off, it will lean forward, so lean it up against your couch or have somebody help you. The stand comes in two pieces, but really it's three, which I will show you how you're supposed to separate the piece right there on the left into two pieces. And if we flip it over, you see that the screws are taped to the bottom of that piece. So essentially you take the plastic piece, and there's a couple different spots on it where you need to pry some clips or just pry the edges out in order to separate it apart. So I'm not a huge fan of this design because of course there is possibility with plastic clips that they could break, and then in that case your cover for the stand, while the stand will still be functional, it wouldn't be able to snap on and cover wires and the holes and whatnot. So the metal part does have a little lip right there, so you just use that to insert the plastic piece of the stand, and then you run 4 screws into that to make the stand into one piece. So now I laid the TV down on top of the foam around the edges. Now we can get a closer look at the ports and how the stand is going to go on. So basically you just align the notches at the top, and then you slide it in, you put your 4 screws, and then you see there is some cable management. However, I don't understand why in the center there's not cuts in those plastic lines. Otherwise, the wire just kind of pops out anyway. But once you put the plastic cover on the back of the stand, it does route all the wires down through the center like that, so you won't see them from the front. Now with the ports, we have 4 HDMI 2.1 ports. All of them are 48 gigabits per second. We have an ATSC 3.0, a LAN port, a couple USBs. So now we'll take a quick look at the remote. It is now smaller this year. There still is a solar panel on the back of it, but for the most part, the design and buttons and such are going to be familiar if you've had a recent Samsung TV. Like I said, it's just basically a shorter remote, and that's about it. And it's no longer that brushed metal aluminum either. It's now plastic. So now, if we go into the service menu, I want to point a couple things out very quickly. First, we can see there are 720 dimming zones in a 40 by 18 setup. And then if we look next to option where it says 65B, and then we look at the sticker on the back of the TV where it says BA01, both of those indicate that it's a BOE panel. And then looking at the pixels, we can see on the left was the QN90B that had a CSOT VA panel, and then on the right is the QN90C with a BOE manufactured ADS panel. This applies for the 55, 65, 75, and 85-inch sizes, not the 43 or 50-inch sizes. Now, if we want to look in content, does this mean anything negative? And the answer is no. We can see there's actually less blooming, but I will cover that much more in depth in the actual review. And today we're focusing on the initial setup and what the average buyer should be concerned with when they first get the TV. So going through your initial setup, if you just keep hitting right, you can usually just skip next and get past some of that because we don't want to connect it online. The reason we don't want to connect online is if you do, it will automatically grab updates, or within a short period of time, even if automatic update is off, it will grab updates, and that can be troublesome. Looking at the menu system now, if you're not online, you see there's really nothing up there, so you're pretty much just going to use it as a non-smart TV and go to your HDMI device. Now, if you don't care about updates changing picture quality, then feel free to connect it online and use built-in apps if you would like to. But I'm going to show this with the Apple TV and how whenever I connect a Samsung with the Apple TV, it always changes the settings. So I always have to go in and make some changes to put them back so that it's on 4K SDR with RGB high. Now you can see when I selected RGB high, it didn't work right away. That's because a setting in the TV needs to be changed. But in order to get to the settings, you have to hit setting button, or the gear button, go up, and then go all the way over. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to list edit and move the all settings so I don't have to do this again. This really should be the first thing that you see, not multi-view, and it definitely shouldn't be the last thing. But anyway, we can see that we're in eco mode, so we don't want that. I'm going to put it in Filmmaker for right now. Then if I go down to Connection and External Device Manager, I can go to the Input Signal Plus for the HDMI ports. I just enable it on all of them, and I don't have to worry about it again. Now the RGB high on the Apple TV will work. While I'm here, I'm going to go down to General and Privacy, and then Power and Energy Saving. And I'm going to make sure all of this is off. And then if you want to leave screensaver on, that's fine, but everything else I'm going to have off. And now we can see on the Apple TV, we have RGB high, and then match content with range and frame rate is turned on. This way, it'll play content in SDR that should be in SDR, and it'll switch to HDR when it is HDR content. And for the apps that do support it, this new Apple TV does have HDR10+. Now, we're not going to go through and change settings in this video. I will go through all the settings in a settings video coming up. But I'll show you how to familiarize yourself with this menu if you haven't used it before. So when you hit the settings button now, you get this bar, and right there you can see you can quick toggle between the different picture modes. And then if you go back to all settings, we can just run through real quick and see that Filmmaker for the most part is fine. How it is out of the box, it will need some adjustment, which I will do later. And that was in SDR. So now after I've loaded up some HDR content, I can go back into the menu and see what picture mode we're on and what the settings are for HDR content. So I have lights on in the room, and I think a lot of people that have a brighter room will want to switch this to movie mode preset to start with. It will be a bit brighter than Filmmaker in HDR. Now if you go to the picture clarity settings, you can see clear motion. You probably don't want to use that. That's black frame insertion. That will cause flicker and cause the image to lose a lot of brightness. The judder reduction at 3 is generally what a lot of people seem to like. I turn off the entire menu though. I don't like any of the motion smoothing. As you scroll down, you may have heard about smart calibration. That's supposed to use a phone to calibrate the display, but I can tell you that does not work. A phone is not a spectroradiometer. It cannot do it. It will not be right, so you're better off just not doing it. HDR tone mapping option, you can go between active and static. Active is going to be a lot brighter most of the time, whereas static would be more accurate. Now if you do want accuracy in your HDR mode, you can pretty much just flip on Filmmaker, and most of this is going to be fine. Again, we'll make some minor changes in the next video. Under the connection menu is where you would find the toggle for game mode to set it to on or auto. We will talk a lot more about game mode in the upcoming settings video. At this point, the TV is plenty serviceable and ready to use, and I don't want to go into too much about the quality of the TV, as that's what the review will be for. However, if you're watching this trying to decide if this is a TV that you should buy and if it's better than the QN90B from last year, I will say that yes, this is better than the QN90B, mostly in processing. As far as brightness, they're very close, or this could be a little bit brighter. However, the blooming control is noticeably better on the QN90C than it was on the QN90B. Any LCD-based TV with full array local dimming or mini LED will have blooming. The amount that you see is mostly going to be determined by the algorithm it has and how bright it is. These TVs are very, very bright, so you're going to have more visible blooming. I'm adjusting the camera right now up and down so that you can see the detail in the highlights versus how much blooming is visible, and then adjusting the camera so that the blooming looks about how it is in person. Now in the movie mode, which was brighter, you would see it more. Filmmaker, which is more accurate, you would see it less. If you don't want to see blooming and you want to have dark black levels and bright highlights, the only option then is OLED. If you're willing to accept a little bit of blooming, then this was one of your better options for 2023. Now compared to the QN90B right now, because of the price differences, I would probably recommend you to just go with a QN90B because it's so much cheaper. However, if you're watching this 3 to 6 months later, then prices have come down and it gets rid of that advantage for the QN90B, and then this one makes more sense. So that's a little more than I wanted to go into with an initial setup video. However, there's a lot of outcry out there about it. Just wanted to make a little statement before getting into the review in the next video. So keep an eye out for the review. We'll have a direct comparison between this and the QN90B side by side, both of them calibrated, and really go into the differences between them. So let's wrap up this video now. I want to thank you all for watching. I hope this helps you out, and I hope to catch you all in the next one. Thanks.